Today, we are cracking open the playbook of an absolute legend, David Ogilvy. You've probably heard him called the father of modern advertising, but honestly, his wisdom is a masterclass that goes way beyond just making ads. It's about business, it's about management, and it's about a deep, deep understanding of what makes people tick.
And we're diving straight into his most famous work, Confessions of an Advertising Man. Now here's the crazy part. This book was published way back in 1963, but its core ideas feel more relevant now in our super noisy digital world than they ever were. We're going to pull out the key lessons that built the global giant Ogilvy and Mather.
And right out of the gate, Ogilvy just hits you with that brutal honesty. This quote, it's his entire philosophy in a nutshell. He had zero time for fluff, for art that didn't work, or for creativity that didn't actually lead to a sale. For him, the only thing that mattered, the only metric, was results.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll get to know the man himself. Then we'll dig into how he managed genius, his secrets to building amazing client relationships, his hard and fast rules for advertising that sells, and we'll wrap it all up with his most timeless commandments.
So, who was this guy really? You might think he was just born into the madman world of advertising. But Ogilvy's path was, well, it was anything but conventional. And that winding road is exactly what made him so brilliant.
I mean, just look at this career path. Every single one of these jobs was a key ingredient in his success. Working in that high-pressure Paris kitchen, that taught him discipline and an obsession with detail. Selling stoves door to door, that taught him raw, unfiltered persuasion. Working at Gallup, that's where he became obsessed with research and data. And his time as a spy? Come on, that taught him everything about human psychology. He basically built his entire advertising toolkit before he ever wrote a single ad.
So how does a guy with a background like that end up managing a company? Well, Ogilvy took all those lessons, from the kitchen, from the streets, from espionage, and he used them to build an agency culture that became a magnet for the absolute best talent in the world. He knew that an agency is nothing more than the people inside it.
These values were the bedrock of his whole operation. The way to get ahead wasn't by playing politics, it was by working hard. He famously couldn't stand office politicians or ruthless sharks. For him, your character was just as important as your creative portfolio. He wasn't just hiring employees, he was building a team. This quote says everything about his confidence. Ogilvy wasn't scared of being outshined by his own staff. In fact, he actively looked for it. He understood a simple, powerful truth. If you hire people who are bigger and better than you become a company of giants. That is how you build an empire.
And this confidence, it carried right over into how he approached clients. He didn't just take any business that walked in the door. No. His advice on winning and keeping clients was, like everything else, refreshingly direct and built on a foundation of mutual respect.
His approach was absolutely surgical. Before he was a big name, he literally made a list of just 5 dream clients. We're talking giants like Shell and Campbell's Soup, and he poured all his energy into winning them. His belief was simple. You do your best work for companies you genuinely admire. It's such a powerful lesson in focusing your effort instead of just scrambling for anything you can get.
And keeping those clients, it wasn't about fancy dinners. It was about becoming a true partner. And that meant being honest, even when the truth was hard to hear. It meant actually believing in the product you're selling. It meant treating their money with total integrity. And it meant having the wisdom to spot a red flag, like a client who burns through agencies every other year.
Okay, now we're getting to the heart of it all. The specific, actionable rules Ogilvy laid out for creating advertising that makes the cash register ring. This is where his background in research and raw salesmanship just bursts onto the page.
This was his golden rule, and it was pretty revolutionary at the time. Back then, a lot of ads were loud, gimmicky, and frankly, kind of dumb. Ogilvy insisted on respecting the consumer. His argument was so simple. Talk to people with the same intelligence and respect you'd show your own family.
He absolutely hated what he called vampire creativity. Ads that are so clever and so artistic that they suck all the attention away from the product. You remember the ad, sure, but you have no idea what it was selling. For Ogilvy, advertising was a humble servant. Its only job was to sell. Awards were nice, but if the cash register didn't ring, the ad was a failure. Period.
And man, he was obsessed with headlines. He famously said that when you've written your headline, you've already spent 80 cents of your dollar. Why? Because 5 times as many people read the headline as read the rest of the ad. His rules were crystal clear. Get the brand name and the big promise in there right away.
Use words that are proven to work. And always, always answer the reader's most important question. What's in it for me?
All right, let's wrap this up with a few of Ogilvy's most potent isms. Think of these as the condensed philosophies that guided his entire life and business, and they are pure gold.
First up, his take on work ethic. He totally lived by this belief in tireless effort. For Ogilvy, hard, meaningful work wasn't some burden you had to put up with. It was the very thing that gave you energy and gave your life purpose.
I love this one. Here you can see that perfect balance he struck between integrity and creativity. The job isn't just to list the facts, it's to find the most interesting, the most memorable, the most persuasive way to frame those facts. Your job is to make the truth fascinating.
And finally, this simple but incredibly profound piece of advice for any leader. Tolerate genius. He knew that true geniuses are often difficult, they're eccentric, they don't fit neatly into some corporate box. His point was, a leader's job is to create a space where these brilliant, quirky people can do their absolute best work.
And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. In our world today, full of AI, algorithms, and just constant digital noise, you have to ask yourself, does this old-school wisdom still apply? Or are these fundamental human-centric principles, respecting the customer, telling fascinating truths, and making room for genius, the very things that will always separate the good from the truly great? Some to think about.